It is a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing one of my idols. I've been following you for years, Andre Chardin. Andre is an author, inspirational, motivational speaker, certified software trainer, CAD/CAM, CVTT trainer, professional, and national speaker. He's been interviewed in RDH Magazine, the Passionate Dentist Podcast, been published in Dentistry Today, the Outlook and Bulletin, and has interacted with thousands of dental professionals. He was the founder of Systems Practice Management, a dental practice management training and consulting firm, creator of the Crew team building and training process, a contributing creator of the companies Dental Life, Dynamic Dental Systems, and HMS, and co-author of the periodontal protocol StatCheck. So, gosh, where do we even want to begin today? What do you want to talk about today, Andre?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the StatCheck program. A lot of what I do is going around the country, helping offices with implementation of technology. And inevitably, we get to the point where we're working with hygiene and making hygiene better. It seems to be the weak point in a lot of offices. And a lot of times that is really about the periodontal protocols that are in the office. And everybody has a perio protocol. I mean, I think I Googled it a few months ago, and there were about 509 results when you do perio protocol as a search. So everybody's got one, but there's no consistency in them. And that's what I've been working with a lot of offices with StatCheck on.
And what is the www on that?
There isn't, there is www.statcheck.com. And that allows you to get some information about the program. But it's been published in Dentistry Today. It's been a bunch of different places. One of the easiest ways to find out about it is, shoot me an email or hit me up on Facebook, and I can just actually send you the info on the program.
And what is that email?
My email is Andre, Andre, Syst, SYST, at Comcast.net.
Syst as in the beginning of system?
Exactly.
So how come you didn't just add the EM on that?
I got lazy. There you go. Hey, I see a tail in the background. You've got a friend with you.
My cat, I have two cats, and they can never figure out why I'm staring at the computer and not talking. Oh my gosh, look at that, Ryan.
That's my partner in crime right there. That's Spaz.
Spaz, S-P-A-Z.
There you go.
Right on.
Everything with me is a four-letter word, just like in your world,
I found out that the only woman that can live with me is a cat.
There you go. Well, he's a boy. He likes hanging out with me in the office.
Right on. And that's in Media, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I'm just south of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've been here for a long time. This is my 27th year in dentistry, so I've been kind of enjoying what I do. I work with about a small percentage of people because what I do is really specialized. I go after that small chunk of people who are just looking to work on the small things that are missing. I'll give you a perfect example. You talk about the three parts in your book, and a lot of business experts talk about people, process, and profit. What I work on is the fourth P that nobody ever talks about, which is philosophy.
Nice.
And that's what I work on.
People, process,
and profit, or product. Some people use the word product instead of profit. I work with that philosophy end of things. And that's what StatCheck does. Instead of concentrating on protocol, like how am I going to see the patient? I'm not a clinician, so how do I scale? How do I disrupt biofilm? What I like to work on is what's the philosophy of the office? What defines class 1, class 2, class 3 perio? And StatCheck actually makes it a lot easier because we use letter grades. And we take those types, and what we found is that if we came up with a language, we can actually get our patients to accept care better. I go back to four-letter words. I use the word sell a lot, but I'm from a sales background. But I use the word sell to mean seeking equal listening and learning. That to me is a much better process. If we can get on the same page with our language and our listening skills, then we can get patients to move forward with periodontal care a lot easier.
So sell, S-E-L-L, seeking equal
listening and learning.
Listening and learning. That's nice.
Yeah, and again, my background before dentistry was selling really high-end retail clothing. I sold $10,000 ball gowns, so that's how I got, and I fell into this business because my brother-in-law was a dentist, and the minute I got into dentistry, I never left.
These were $10,000 dresses.
$10,000 dresses. I worked for the Yves Saint Laurent
You
Couture
should have
boutiques.
kept all their names and created a do not call list for men seeking women.
I agree. I think I bankrupted a lot of really wealthy men in the world. Yeah. So, uh, the way that language works is I try to stay as far inside of dentistry as I can outside of dentistry. So I use all the things that I learn outside of dental world in dental world, like that selling technique. It, when I started, I like most front desk people, because I worked at the front desk. Most front desk people were sort of thrown at the front desk and told to learn something. I was given your tapes, the 30-day MBA. I was given a big giant book on perio disease, and I was told, hey, just learn this stuff, suck it in, and then you're going to work at my front desk.
But you
You know,
didn't get to the 30th day. I don't think anybody on earth got to the 30th day.
Now I think the VCR broke before I got to the end.
And by the way, I put all those up on iTunes and YouTube for free. It's a separate channel, just Dr. Fran's 30-day dental MBA. A lot of the dental students, and it's amazing. They're the hottest in like Japan and Asia, and
It's phenomenal information, and it's the backbone for what I learned. Your MBA program, I picked up Tom Lamoli's book on periodontal disease and charting and coding. I picked up a bunch of things like that. Actually, one of the first books that I was given was a textbook that my brother-in-law had, and the first page, I think the lining notes had a phrase, and it was something like. Uh, don't treat the patient as a whole, or do treat the patient as a whole, WHOLE, and not the mouth as a whole, HOLE. That was one of the first things I learned, and that's sort of my path down this road.
okay, I know my homies,
Hmm.
and they're all driving to work right now, and they're listening to you, and they're saying, there's nothing wrong with my perio program. So you only know what you don't know. So paint a picture, red flag. Try to get into their walnut brain of what could possibly be wrong with their hygiene, because they like their hygienist. She sees them on time. They're busy. I mean, what is wrong with their hygienist?
Well, there's nothing wrong with their hygienist. There's nothing
Their
wrong with the
hygiene
program.
program. Yeah.
What's wrong is the disconnect between the patient and the clinician. That part of the process where it's okay. I'll give you an example, and you use this really well. Do I have brushing cavities or do I have flossing cavities? Now I understand why I have a filling that I need to have done. A patient understands differently than the clinician. And the stat check program, instead of using class 1, class 2, type 1, type 2 perio, we use letter grades. So is the periodontal condition asymptomatic? A. Is it bleeding? B. Is there subgingival calculus? That's C. Is there depth or disease? That's D. And is it failing? And that's an F. And if we can talk about that based on quads, the way we're going to treat them, we can divide the mouth up and say, hey, Howard, on the right side, you're doing really well. So you've got B's on the upper and a B on the lower. Bleeding, we can take care of, and we can work together for that. On the other side, there's on the upper left side, there's a C, and we need to get a little more aggressive with that. In the lower, there's a D, and we might need to be a little more aggressive and maybe treat you with some site-specific anti-infectives or something like that. But once we come up with a language where it's a commonality, we can have patients accept care better. And like I said, it's not the perio protocols. It's not the getting them in, we'll get them in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. It's getting them to accept care. That's where I see the breakdown. And that happens across the board with either you have one hygienist who's into perio and one hygienist who's not, or you have a doctor who walks in the room and says, patient looks great, but they're bleeding buckets. So that's what happens with the disconnect. Most people have very, very, very good hygienists and very, very good programs, but then patients don't accept, or somebody at the front desk says, well, they don't cover it, so we're not going to get it done. So a lot of that is just the disconnect in the listening.
And when they
And
blame it on the third party, I mean, it's amazing when you go to Asia and Africa. I just got back from 4 countries in Asia and a country in Africa, and It's amazing how poor women come up with the money for Invisalign orthodontics. They don't even, they got their iPhone and their Invisalign trays in, and they're supposed to be in a poor country,
Yep,
and no third party paid for
I
it.
agree. Yeah, I
So
agree. And
if a human wants anything, I don't care if it's drugs or an iPhone, they're going to get it.
I agree 300%. And again, I worked in an environment where I had customers coming in, buying $300-400 shoes at the time, or $10,000 ball gowns. And these were just wealthy. These were people who wanted the product and could afford to buy the product. And I use the example. There are lots of really, really nice cars in some really, really bad neighborhoods. you know, so people spend on what they're going to want to spend on, and they also spend for things that they understand. And that's why Invisalign is taken off. So many people understand it. You know?
That's true too. I practice across the street from the Guadalupe Indian Reservation. An area is poor when there's 25,000 Catholics living there and there's no church with a Catholic priest there. It's just a Catholic nun. So
Yeah.
it's real poor. There's not even
I
a priest in there. And most of the homes, well, not most, but I'd say over half the ones I've been into have a dirt floor.
Yeah.
And then the son has a $30,000 purple lowrider parked right in front of it,
I agree.
and he's sleeping on a dirt floor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, what
amazing.
Yeah, one of the things I use in a presentation I do, I do a presentation called Disney Dental, where I use the example, if Disney ever built a dental practice and put it across the street from your practice, would it scare you to death? Would they start taking your patients? People who go to Disney wind up spending $15 on an ice cream sandwich, and don't blink. And you can get that same effect in your practice. I did it in the practice I worked in, and we took every single PPO plan. We did all kinds of work. We had patients getting, IV sedation, and people were getting lots of work done, but they valued it based on the language that we used. And that's been a passion of mine for years. And
It's always been the soft skills. What do you think of some of the consultants out there? Tom Orant talks a lot about your patient comes in for a clean exam and X-ray on a PPO or whatever, but you can upsell them a fluoride treatment. Some of these big chains, I'm pretty sure Heartland Dental does. They're always suggesting to adult fluoride treatments. I mean,
sure.
adult. What do you think about that? There's a lot of buzz about that. You agree? Disagree?
I think it's a great thing. I think a lot of people and a lot of things I've seen recently are, people are pushing the envelope with insurance. That's a little scary, but I value the adult fluoride conversation. I think it just needs to be done in such a way that it fits in with, again, philosophy of the practice. Major concern. Does it meet the philosophy of the practice? Does the doctor agree? Does all the hygienists on the team, or, sorry, on the crew agree? And if so, then it should be something that is part of the protocol. It shouldn't be an add-on that one hygienist does and not another. If it's the philosophy of the practice, I'm behind it 300%.
And that's what's sad about all the continuing education. I mean, I've been to a gazillion courses, and on the right hand of the room, it's all single dentists that came by themselves.
Yep.
And then the other side of the room, it's all dental offices where, for every dentist, there's, the spouse, a hygienist, a receptionist, and the whole team learns. And if you just go down there and pull everybody's P&L, the dentist that brought the whole team, they're making almost twice as much net income as the dentist that always come alone. It's a team sport, and they don't get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a presentation a few weeks ago. I had an entire crew from office come, but the doctor didn't come. And the next week, I had a long phone conversation with the doctor, asking if I could come back in and redo the entire seminar in his office so that he could hear it. And you miss that continuity of care when everybody's not involved. And what did he save? He really didn't save anything by not being there. He just didn't want to go that day. So when I see an entire crew in a from a dental office at one of the presentations, they get it. They're all charged up. They go back Monday morning and they're ready to put it in place. They all are on the same page, and that's the most important part of what we do.
And tell everybody what you do. I mean, what do you do?
Well, I spend 99% of my time working with Patterson Dental, helping integrate a lot of the technologies in the Intel offices, software, CAD/CAM, digital X-ray. I do a lot of the speaking too. So in my evenings, on my weekends, I'm out speaking with dental societies, ADOM. I've done ADOM a few times. So all kinds of dental groups like that. I spend time doing that. And I spend a lot of time also coaching offices. I have a lot of doctors who call me. I'm a recovering consultant, if that's a good way to put it. I'm on step 11 of a 12-step program. So I'm no longer a consultant, but I do a lot of coaching. I still have offices that I worked with 20 years ago who still call me couple times a month and just say, hey, I got an idea about this. How can I help? How can you help me with this idea? And I love just giving those kinds of phone calls. I spend a lot of time doing that.
What's the what can we talk about days like maximum return investment? What's got you excited where you see a dentist changes something, gets something, does something different? Because the stock market's let a lot of air out of the market in the last couple months. I got an MBA. The average recession is about every 8 years. It's, believe it or not, it's been 8 years since the last one. A lot of people are nervous, scared. They think their practices are flat. What do you think can spice up an office? Is bottom line.
Well, the number one thing to change an office right now is your hygiene program. I mean, the easy one, any practice management software should be able to generate this report. If they just run a report for the number of exams they did in the last 12 months. So tell me the number of periodic exams, D120, and
D120.
D120s and the D150s. That's obviously a D0120 and a D0150 for the last 12 months. Run that number, and let's just say for
D0120 is an exam. D0150 is what?
Is also an exam. The periodic is the 120, and the comprehensive is the 150.
Okay.
So if they run 2 exams, they can tell how many exams they did in the last 12 months.
Okay.
Then what they want to do is run the number of adult prophies they did in the same period. D1110.
D0110.
No, just D1110.
D1110, okay.
Yep.
And that's a prophy.
That's an adult prophy. Now, if they divide the number of prophies they did into the number of exams they did, that gives you a percentage of the patients who are having prophies. All right. If that number, which I've done this, and I've been in probably 5,000 practices in the 27 years. I do that almost every office I go in, and typically it's about 85%.
85% of the people who had an exam had a prophy?
Yeah. And the scary part is, okay, so the ADA says statistically 80% of the patients in the U.S. have periodontal disease. Now they count gingivitis. So, okay, we'll go with that. The CDC says there's 50% of the patients in America have periodontal disease because they don't count gingivitis.
So ADA says what percent?
80%.
80%, they count gingivitis. And the CDC says 50%. The ADA is a trade group for dentists, so that's why they're exaggerating 30%. But the CDC is saying it's 50%.
Because they don't count gingivitis as periodontal disease. So if you just look at that number, and let's just, just so we can appease some people, let's just say it's 60% of your patients have periodontal disease. Or if you want to be nice about it, let's go with the CDC and say 50%. Then you're obviously doing either bloody prophies, which we see all the time. If you're sponging up the patient after they're getting out of the chair, there's a problem. They're either doing bloody prophies or they're billing incorrectly. So there's one or the other. And if we can shift some of those patients, even if we say 10% of those patients to perio treatment, for one, you're doing the right thing clinically. And for two, it's going to boost the practice from a financial standpoint. So there's got to be a path, and that goes back to what I said, that fourth P that nobody uses, that philosophy issue. If you start with that philosophy issue, if we're treating periodontal disease as a practice, then we're at 50%, 60%, 70%, or 80% of our patients being periodontally treated.
Of adults.
And again, you're going to have a patient base of 7 to 10% who are either kids or Mrs. Jones, who is the edentulous. So we take that number out. But definitely you're going to see 50% of your patients should be in some sort of continual periodontal care. And, I usually get that, well, our patients won't accept that. And that goes back to what we were talking about before. They're not going to accept it if you're going to say periodontal therapy is not covered. Well, it is covered. It may be covered differently, but it is covered in most insurance benefit programs. So we just have to find a language in order to be able to get that to happen. And that's, like I said, that's what the stat check program is. That's what, I keep mentioning crew. That's what crew is all about, is getting everybody on the same page. For years, people have talked about teamwork and teams. And you're a sports guy. I'm not a sports person, but every time I think about a team, I can think of one person on the team. Like, I'm from Philadelphia. I think about Allen Iverson was on a team, but you probably couldn't mention anybody else who was on that team. And I use the example when I go in offices about, if the team hits the lottery, we're all leaving tomorrow. But if you're a crew, while you're on the boat, you row. When you're off the boat, you can do whatever heck you want. But when we're on the boat, we need to all be rowing at the same pace, with the same purpose in mind, with the same sort of stroke, so that we're all on the same page. That's where I come from with Perio. We all need to be on the same page. And that's why, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the average office collects 765,000 a year, and that's 175. So how many? You said 7 to 10% are kids or dentalists. Is that what you said?
Yep. Yeah.
So about how many? What would the numbers be for that D0120? What would be about the average number of exams and then the number average of prophies?
Well, if you think about the typical pod office, so you talk about a doctor with 2 hygienists. That's a typical pod.
Is that
in my language?
Is that about the typical office? I mean, would you say the average office has 2 hygienists?
Yeah, and I mean, if you're talking about 1 full, 2 part-timers, it's still about the same. All right.
Okay.
And the capacity on an office like that is 1,600 patients. If you think about one patient an hour, 8 hours a day, 50 weeks a year, that's 1,600 patients. But you're asking your patients to come in twice a year, so that's really the capacity of 800 patients per hygienist. So total 1,600 patients, 1 doctor. If you think about that number, that's about right.
Mm-hmm.
The key to that is, I look at it like the orange juice growers in Florida. When they squeeze an orange, they don't just pinch it. They squeeze it and get all the juice out of it. Then they grind the rinds up and sell it to somebody who makes orange juice extract. And then they sell the seeds to Burpee or whoever. They get every bit of juice they can out of an orange. And what we're doing is we're squeezing patients. Sorry to put it that way, but I'm in sales, so that's the way it goes. We're squeezing the orange, but we're pinching by going prophies and not doing adult fluoride and not really looking at the patient as a whole. We're just sort of just brushing their teeth and sending them on, which is a complete waste of time.
And it's also not to what I think the only mission statement a dentist should ever have. I think every dentist should have the same mission statement is to I want to create a dental office that I want my own children and grandchildren and great grandchildren to go to.
I agree.
And do you want your grandchildren drilled, filled, and billed with inlays, onlays, root canals, crowns, and implants, or do you want all that stuff prevented?
Exactly.
I mean, the hygienists and the dentists at 65, they're not 10% edentulous. 75, they're not 20% edentulous. I can count on one hand how many dentists I know that personally got an implant. Yeah. I mean, so prevention is what makes me get excited, not ripping out all these teeth and doing immediate denture.
I agree, and I'll give you a great example of a client who's taken that to another level. And this is a guy I worked with 20 years ago. His patients were all on a 6-week recall, and that's by choice because what he did is he changed the language of dentistry. He doesn't do prophies for his active patients. He allows them to come in and have their teeth polished anytime they want. And they're patients who call up on a Friday and say, or a Thursday and say, hey, I got a hot date tomorrow. Can I get my teeth polished? Sure, come on in. It's $40 or $50. And they're paying cash out of the pocket for something that we understand is just polishing their teeth. But these are patients of record. They come in for their normal recall, revisits, but they can come in anytime they want to have their teeth polished. And they've changed the language of dentistry. So they actually think about dentistry more like a preventive measure, and they seek it out. So, it's amazing, just like somebody might have Invisalign or whitening or something like that, they start to look at dentistry differently, and they look at the office differently.
That is really cool, and I also love that when you advertise tooth whitening for life.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. So you got a patient, they're on every 6-month recall, they pay to have their teeth bleached. But whitening for life is that every time you come in for your cleaning, you get 2 more tubes of bleach.
Yep.
And bring your tray in so we make sure it fits and it's all good and everything. And that's do you like that too?
I love it. And it keeps us on top of it so that when we do see something happening inside the mouth, we can quickly fix it so we're not talking about root canal, post-acute crown, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's funny, working in a dental office, at least once a month, we all sort of shut down for a little while so that we could have our dental work done. And I see a lot of offices who don't take the time to do that. And we just get so busy with what we do that we don't do what we're supposed to do.
Okay, but logistically, how she's driving to work, and she's saying, "Okay, I hear you, but man, I'm going to pull up to work in 30 minutes. I mean, how do I get this change? How do I get my staff from A to B?"
Okay. Well, first thing, and as somebody who teaches on a daily basis with offices, one of the things is we have to slow down. There's I was at a Care Credit conference a little while back, and one of the reps said, "Slow down and see the crowns." I love that. I should get it on a T-shirt. We need to slow down. Starbucks shut down for a day. They lost $38 million in one day, because they shut down to train their staff on how to pull an espresso, because they lost their focus. We need to slow down. We need to train our staffs. We need to get on the same page. So somebody pulling up to their office, I would tell them, okay, if you have this idea, don't throw it to your front desk person. Don't say, okay, admin staff, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. Say, we need to shut down 2 weeks from now and retool. We need to figure out a way to implement some of these ideas. And we need an idea that we can put into place that will stick. And if you don't take the time to do it, everybody's come in with this great idea that they're going to do tomorrow. My brother-in-law would come, hey, tomorrow we're going to start doing beg technique ortho. Okay, what is that? Well, I just was at a conference. I'll give you the paperwork and you'll learn how to do it. No, we need to shut down and learn how to do it. He came back with face bows after he'd gone to Dawson and said, okay, tomorrow I'm going to start doing these things. You really need to take the time to learn how to do it before you implement it. So I say, if you get an idea from this conversation we're having, talk to your staff. Ask them what the coding is going to be. Ask them how that's going to impact some of the things that we do, and pick a timeline to get it implemented, and actually take the time to get it done. But you can't do it tomorrow morning unless you expect it not to work. That's the best way to make it fail, is to throw it into the office.
And if they email you'll email them the Perio plan?
Be glad to. I'll give them anything they need, and I'll be glad to spend any time on the phone with them. I spend about 30 to 60,000 miles a year in the car. So I'm loving to talk to doctors while I'm driving. Keeps me awake.
What's your phone number?
My cell number is 484-437-5562.
And you're a huge poster. You got 500 posts on Dentaltown.
Yeah.
Did you start a thread on that?
On which? On the StatCheck program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a while ago. And actually, I put out a challenge to see, again, with normalizing perio, I've been to a bunch of the universities and actually was in talks with one of the universities about putting StatCheck into place so that they could have, across all of their teaching programs, a normal way of diagnosing perio. So I challenged Dentaltown with this. If I walk, as a patient, if I walk in and I just have 8 teeth, and let's just say I have 2 through 9, one's impacted. That's all the teeth I have in my head.
Watch what I'm going to do. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to hit on the app on your column. Anyone have perio case type form? Is that the one you posted on too?
Yeah.
So I'm going to hit comment, and then I'm going to hit on the app. Then I'm going to hit camera, and then I'm going to hit take new picture. Take a picture of we'll go like this. Wave. And then I'll hit use photo. And that. So if you're on Dentaltown, it should be on today's active patients.
Okay.
It's the topic. Anyone have perio case type form? And then the other one said anyone have a nice flow chart for perio protocol? And then you talk about it then.
Yep.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like I actually met somebody on Dentaltown, Carolyn Biami. She's the RDH down in Florida who used to be a dentist in Brazil. And she's got a phenomenal perio protocol flow chart. It works really well. But again, if patients don't say yes, who cares if you've got a protocol? I mean, there's lots of Rolls Royces sitting on a lot that people aren't buying up every other day. There's got to be a call to action to get them to do it. And that's why, the PSR kind of failed because although it was a great program, not a lot of people bought into it.
And why do you think that is?
And I think it used a language, again, that had nothing to do with patients. It had a lot to do with periodontal diagnosis, but if patients don't understand it and patients don't get it, then it's pointless. We've all come back to the office on Monday morning with this great idea, but to actually get it to work, it's a whole different story. There's lots of Cerax sitting in somebody's garage that they couldn't get it to work because the staff didn't buy into it. The doctors didn't, in my hands, the machine didn't work. So
and I thought that was interesting. You said you do 99% of your work with Patterson.
Yep.
So I said, so then what do you want to talk about? I just knew it was going to be Cerac machine, and you went right to Perio.
Oh yeah. I love the Cerac machine. Just like you, I was back in the day of the Cerac 2. So
Dude,
I
I was back
remember
to
doing it.
Cerac 1.
Oh, it was like
I had
making
the
teeth with
Cerac 1.
Legos. Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was an amazing tool for the guys who could do it, and like talking to Sam Puri on a regular basis and seeing what he does with the machine. It's amazing, but at the same time, there's a buy-in that has to happen. There's a language that has to happen. It changes the practice.
And the thing people don't realize about Sam Puri is that, number one, he's tall, dark, handsome, gorgeous, the ultimate. When he comes into my office to train my staff on Cerac, my assistants are melting.
Yeah,
That guy could probably sell my assistants to get a full mouth denture.
I
And
agree. He probably could do it for me too.
so he gets A plus on all the soft skills.
Yep.
And then someone who doesn't have the leadership skills, the soft skills, the selling skills, all this kind of stuff, and just want to buy a shiny object and think they're going to have the same results as Sam Puri. It's kind of like me buying a piano and expecting the results of Beethoven. You got to learn how to play the piano first. You got to learn how to play the people first, the soft skills stuff.
Yep.
And you got to get the people on board.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching a YouTube video. I was just clicking through some YouTube video, and I was listening to some classical music, and one of the links was to a concert that Liberace did, and to see the way that this guy not only played the piano but played the audience. You're talking about selling. That is selling. The way that he sold himself to the audience is what our doctors need to do in order to be able to get them to accept care.
And my mom's mom, Grandma Mary, she thought he was just the greatest entertainer on earth. And Liberace would walk out there and he'd say, "Do you like my gown?
Yeah.
You paid for it. It was $100,000." And they'd all clap.
Yeah.
I mean, they just, oh God, he could play the people.
Yeah,
You're right. He played the people better than the piano.
I agree, and that's what, like I said, I look outside of dentistry a lot. I spend a lot of time in high-end clothing stores in Neiman Marcus, and everything that I find there are ideas to use back in the dental office. Like I was talking to a friend who's struggling with the idea of having an implant done. And he said, I really don't want to have to go through all this. And then they told me that the implant wasn't the crown. And I thought, you know what? Here's something that we keep missing. We keep using language that is within our own field. And an implant, as an example, maybe we should stop calling it that. Maybe we should start calling it an artificial root. I mean, we do artificial limbs, we do replacement knees, and maybe we should stop calling it an implant. I mean, implants imply a little something different, that a little further below the neck that we work on typically. If we call it an artificial root that we then put a crown on, I think patients understand that a little bit better, and they're accepting a little bit more of the two-part procedure. I think the word periodontal probing, nobody wants to be probed, but what we do is we measure the pocket with a periodontal ruler. If we change the language, we change the acceptance rate, and a lot of it has to do with we're talking amongst our friends, but we're using language that is within our profession, and we've got to look outside of our profession to learn that.
Tell me if this is a minor problem, medium problem, large problem, because you've seen so many offices for so many years. You've been doing this, what, 3 decades?
Almost, yeah.
Almost 3 decades, and some it seems like the dentist is an introvert, shy engineer, math professor type personality. So he or she hires people just like that. Mm-hmm. And it seems like if a hygienist comes in and starts talking and selling or whatever, the dentist clamps down on her and says, "Hey, you can't diagnose this. Why did you tell us she had gum disease? and needed this. I have to do the exam, blah blah. Do you see hygienists wanting to sell and do all this stuff and being squashed by the dentist?
Uh,
Is that very common?
well, tip again, when I walk into an office and I see that that the hygiene crew and the doctor are on different pages, that is a problem. But I don't see that a lot. What I do see is people are selling incorrectly. Let's put it that way. They're not looking for that equal listening and learning. What they're doing is they're either uh, treatment planning to a point where they're going back to the engineer field and they're saying, okay, you need a root canal, post-accord, and crown. And of course, a patient's going to say, well, can we do the root canal last and can I get the crown first? Because they're giving line items. I'm a big car guy, but when I go to the mechanic, I can't stand when they open the hood and show me what's under the hood. I could care less. I love to drive. I don't want to know what's under the hood. We go to that place that we're most comfortable with that line item idea. And sometimes it's better to have somebody at the front desk, somebody who is an assistant, who has that language skill, who can do that for the entire office. That was my job when I started. My brother-in-law is the nicest guy was the nicest guy in the world, and he was the ultimate dentist, and he was the ultimate in CE. He loved what he was doing. But as far as language skills, he needed somebody who could actually clamp down and actually talk to patients at their level. I used to say, hey, Mrs. Jones, would you like to have a cap? And he would freak out that I would use that term, but the patients understood it, and my acceptance rate was in the 80%. So, you're right. Sometimes we need somebody else to do it, but as far as being on the same page, most of the time they are.
How long is this stat check program?
How long has it been out?
No, when you email it, I mean, is it 1 page, 10 pages?
It's a one-pager. The original stat check program was a 36-page clinical document. It was actually called PQI way back then, Periodontal Quality Index. It was a 35-page, like a clinical exam that was done. We got it down to a one-pager. So you could fit on the back of a deck of cards. That's how small it is.
I'm thinking for the homies, would it be easier if you start a new thread called Andre Chardon Stat Check Program?
Yeah, I could do that.
And then when we put out the podcast, we'll put a link to it also?
Sure, I can do that.
And because they're driving to work, I don't know if they're going to be able to remember Andre, Andre, and then think of system, SYST, SYST, Andre SYST at Comcast.net.
Yep. And a lot of the easier way to get to me is Facebook. That seems to be the linchpin for everybody's communication. So if they go to facebook.com/Shirdan, SHIRDAN, it's other good way to get in touch with me.
And you said that's Irish for Sheridan on
That
Ellis Island?
Yeah, I do a lot of genealogy research, and that's where it goes back to for Sheridan.
So are you a Irish whiskey man?
I'm a tequila guy.
My son turned me on to a new thing in a tequila at the county meeting where you put some plant in there. What was that little plant? Some little Japanese flower that's floating in your margarita, and you chew it first as you drink your margarita.
I'll hand my glass to you. You can peel out the flour, and I'll drink the rest of it. How's that?
So then, what other things when you're talking about normalizing periodontal diagnosis and treatment do you that you see out in the field that people should think about?
Well, the biggest thing is really doing that crew work, is actually getting everybody on the same page clinically, getting everybody on the same page financially. I was in an office recently where the front desk person was actually telling people not to put their entire copayment on their credit card because that would be a financial strain for them. So obviously she wasn't on the same page financially with the office. So getting everybody on the same page is critical for all aspects of the practice. Building that philosophy first, knowing where the office stands clinically, where we stand about collections, where we stand on amalgams versus composites, removables as opposed to fixed, whatever the philosophy of the practice is, it needs to be from top down.
Are you mostly driving around Pennsylvania all day, around Philadelphia? Is that mostly your main focus? I mean, the 80-20 rule?
Yeah, that's my 80/20. The 20% I'm on the plane. Before 9/11, I was on a plane 200 days a year. So, now I'm in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. That's most of my day.
So doing this 3 decades and being in all these offices, how do these offices look compared to a decade ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I mean, is dentistry growing and vibrant? Do you see it contracting and shrinking? Do you see it? How do you see it change?
I do see it contracting. I think what's happening is the cost of goods has gone up and the value of dentistry to patients has gone down. I think that's what's happening. I think, and my the heyday of my consulting days was pre 9/11, was the heyday of dentistry. Then we had, of course, Lehman Day, 2008. That changed a whole lot. I think what's happening now is the docs who I knew, who had thriving practices now are in a situation where dollars are tight. If you had a hygienist 20 years ago, 15 years ago, she's making big bucks now, and that's cutting into your PPO schedule. You know, when your margins are 66, your margin's 40%, and your overhead 60%, you can't afford to pay a hygienist that and sit around just doing prophies. You can't have a prophy palace.
Well, that's interesting because you talked earlier about Starbucks closed down and lost $38 million to train all their employees for a day. And what's very interesting, since 2008, economists have written articles that the three sectors that have not recovered to their pre 9/11 days is dentists, lawyers, and lattes.
Yeah.
We have not got back to that level, and that was
And
8 years ago. Or
yeah,
that was a long time ago. I'm
yeah,
I'm sorry, not 9/11. I said that wrong. Lehman's Day, not
they
9/11.
mistake. Yeah, and I don't think dentistry will come back. I think what's going to happen is, and you've actually mentioned this too. What I see with managed offices. I hate that corporate office thing, corporate dentistry word, but the managed offices, I think that's going to be a strong driver for what happens in the dental economy. The sole proprietor is going to be stronger based on getting their game together. And then the small groups are going to be a huge component of what happens in the future. But the sole proprietor is going to be there, but they've got to really be on top of their business. They've got to start thinking like a business. It has to be a business and not just a practice.
And what percent of these dentists, what percent of these ones that you're seeing are have signed up for PPOs? How
Uh,
prevalent is it?
Probably 80%. It's pretty high. It's
Well, I'm
it's probably
sorry,
eighty
it, it,
percent.
it cut out.
I think 80% of the offices are PPO providers
Yeah,
in one shape or form.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
80. Yeah. And
and
what's the
I'm
other 20%?
the other 20% are fee for service, and again, I see a lot of specialists, periodontists, oral surgeons. Well, I don't see a lot of oral surgeons. I see pedo, um, ortho. They're going to take the plans because that's where their bread and butter is. Um, but the fee for service guys are struggling. I have friends who are who are fee for service providers. They're struggling, and I think I get a call a week where it's, Andre, when is that time when I need to take a plan? And it's like planting a tree. The answer to that was 20 years ago.
And that was, and 20 years ago, dentistry was margin driven, where you took your cost, added your profit, arrived at your fee, submitted to the insurance, and they only decided what percent they're going to pay. And now it's volume driven, where the insurance companies say, you sign this plan, I'll deliver you a volume of patients, but here's the fee. You got to subtract your profit and arrive at a budget. And dentists have not, back to your philosophy, people, process, profit, product philosophy, they have not changed their business model. I mean,
Yep.
and the older they are, the more they don't get it. Some of these young kids coming out in a volume-driven dental market, that's all they've known.
Yeah.
But so many dentists they still have that business model of the days when Delta would pay 80% of whatever you submitted to them.
I- It's really, one of the more interesting things in what I get to do, because I get to work with offices implementing technology, and they're always most offices are looking for an edge. How do I make this easier, better, faster? but they're not changing the way that they do dentistry. It's not the software is going to make it easier, better, faster. It's process is going to make it easier, better, faster. How often you're getting up out of the chair to go, to a closet to pull out something. How many times have you cut back staff in order to make it easier for your payroll, but at the same time, now you've got to go get and clean your instruments. I see doctors doing this all the time.
Andre, what do you think of I'm always just thinking of my homies, like how are they going to get it done? What do you think if you made an online CE course for the hygiene system, where so the dentist could just sit there and all she'd have to do is say, I just need to close down my office and rig up a computer, and then my hygienist and my assistants and my receptionists can all hear it from Andre.
Yeah, and actually, I talked to Howard Goldstein about that, and I think we're going to get that done in the next couple of months. That's something we wanted to get done. Uh,
Because it's so much easier to have a good guy, bad guy, and have some bad guy far away that's going to make us change instead of the dentist coming in and saying, I'm going to move your cheese.
I agree, and like I said, a lot of this is you could have the best perio program in the whole world, and it all fails if your admin team is not on the same page. Because a big part of putting a perio program in place is understanding how it's properly billed. That is really, really important. And there's a lot of things out there on the lecture circuit that aren't teaching the proper coding, or they're teaching coding that is a little in the gray area. But understanding how that all works is important. You have to be all the same page, clinically and financially.
So I want to you don't have to switch gears. You can stay on Perio, but
Sure.
you're with Patterson. You're lecturing a lot on technology. Go from the highest return on investment to the least return. What technology are you out there lecturing at study clubs and lectures and going into office where you see the highest chance where if the dentist bought or adopted a technology, they do better?
Right now, and this would have been completely different 3 months ago, it would be CBCT. That's something that is a game changer right now, uh, for a number of different reasons. For the biggest reason is
You're
is
talking
the
about the
doctor.
Galileos.
Galileos, any of the cream systems, if they're incorporating it into their offices, for one, it's changing the philosophy of the practice. The doctor's looking deeper. They're seeing more. They're understanding more about what's going on. They make different treatment decisions. Are we going to retreat this endo, or are we going to, let it go and go for an implant? It dramatically changes the way that the office looks at dentistry. As a consultant, I guess I'm legally obligated to use the word paradigm shift, but I like the idea that yeah, Bill Gates actually uses the term pond, and he says you don't have a paradigm shift, your pond changes, which means it gets deeper, it gets wider, and sometimes we put life in it, sometimes we get dried up, but that pond changes on a daily basis. That's how it has to happen. It has to happen organically. It has to really work in such a way that when you bring a product, any product, CAD CAM, cone beam, digital, whatever product it is, when you bring it into the office, it needs to change the office organically, and it can't be this shift. I see so many offices bring in digital, and the first patient that gets in the chair, they say, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, we have a new product that we're going to use on you." Well, you wouldn't want to hear that if you went to your cardiologist. You know, it just sounds bad. It should be something that flows with the philosophy of the practice. We brought digital in here because we want to be able to diagnose better. We're using cone beam so that we can see a little bit more and we can treat you better. You know, and it can't be this paradigm shift where the door opens up and all of a sudden you just throw it in. It has to be organic. But that's the game changer right now. CAD CAM is phenomenal, but CAD CAM's always been phenomenal, but people didn't adopt it in the way it was. We looked at it as a marketing strategy, bad idea. We looked at it as, different things. CAD CAM is, it's making crowns. It's making inlays, onlays. But it has to happen in such a way that it's patient focused. We're doing this because it helps the patient. It's a more, conservative restoration. Those are the things that drive those products forward.
You know what a big complaint is with CAD CAM, and I think my best friend solved it best. A lot of those CAD CAM is, it used to be you just schedule an hour, you'd numb press, impress, temporize, they'd be out, then be back in 2 weeks. And then we wanted to do this in office same day, right? But a lot of times, people like Samir, they'll knock that out in an hour and a half. But out in the trenches, a lot of times that's 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours long.
Yep.
And now one of my friends is he's just scanning them all, and then Mattern has this lady come in on Wednesdays and mills them all out.
Yep.
And I mean, it just so he can do a crown every single hour, numb, prep, temporize, get them out. And then she'll come in Wednesday and just mill them all out. I think that's amazing. But
I think it's a great idea. That's phenomenal.
But back to that CBCT, the easiest way. I mean, every dentist wants to be quality, so they go to Pankey, they go to Coyce, they go to Spear, they go to LV. They're always chasing Frank Spear and the Scottsdale Center. But loops. If you can see 2.5, 3 times better. Magnification. There's not an endodontist I've ever met that said, "My God, when you look in that clean canal at 8 to 12x, it's a game changer." And CBCT, I don't know a single person that got a CBCT that wants to go back to 2D pano. Just like I don't know a single person that can see that wants to be blind. And just seeing is a game changer. And I'll tell you the downside of a CBCT is, I'm in there. I got 2 associates, and I've always got friends in now. It seems like there's a dentist in my office every day from somewhere, and every one of those CBCTs will all point to something and have no idea what we're looking at. It kind of reminds me when they threw the Galeos, the space shuttle up there.
Yep.
And you see all these images, and you're just like, what the hell's that? I mean, I swear to God, there's so many times it's just like, so I think that the online training of how to read CBCTs, I mean, if I was selling Galeos, if I was selling Kerastene, if I was selling a CBCT, I'd find some oral radiologist to make, 100 hours of how to read that thing because, yep. I mean, I see it every week where 3 doctors have no idea what that image is. I mean, it's just so much information. It's mind-blowing.
I agree. One of the unique things is working with when I started in dentistry, again, when I started, I was in the minority of men working in a dental office who wasn't a dentist. And one of the unique things that happened was every time I would go to a course with my brother-in-law, I get there for registration and they'd say, "Oh, okay, Dr. Sherdan, I guess we'll sign you up." And I would just go with it and say, "Sure." So here I am, over a cadaver doing, osseous surgery. I had no idea what I'm doing, but I took all these courses so I could understand it. And I see these offices who, they buy these machines, but they don't take the CE, or they say, "Oh yeah, we'll just send that off." But again, like you said, if you don't know what you're looking at, you're lost. It's a roadmap that you can't read. It's a roadmap in French, and you don't know what you're talking about. You really need to take the CE if you can to get educated on that product. You need to know what's going on there, and once you do, again, it changes dramatically the way that you treatment plan your patients.
And the gender did change. I mean, my president's a woman. Today's dental office manager's a man. 2 out of 4 of my assistants are guys. My associate dentist is a female. It's just, and I think it's because America lost 50 million manufacturing jobs, and then guys are seeing they can't find a construction job, and their wife's bringing home bank at the dental office, and they're just like, why not go into healthcare?
Yeah.
And
it's funny because in my area there's so many dental schools. I get to hang out at Temple University and University of Penn a lot, and seeing the classes change over the last 20 years. It's been amazing to see what
so
the classes.
What are the 2 dental schools there? You said Temple and Penn.
Well, within an hour of me, I've got Temple, Penn. If I go another couple hours, I can get to Howard. I can get to University of Dental Medicine.
Howard's in what?
Howard's in D.C., the D.C. area.
Is it in the actual 10 mile D.C. area?
Yeah, I can get to D.C. in about 3 hours from my house.
But it's in D.C. Is Georgetown in D.C.? Or is it Maryland?
I don't know. I don't know where Georgetown. I don't know where the dental school is at Georgetown. But we have University of Dental Medicine, New Jersey. If I go 5 hours, I can get to Tufts. So within this area, and I can go to Pittsburgh, which it's 5 hours.
And I'm going to throw you under a bus. Which one's better, Temple or Penn?
Let's do this. My dentist went to Temple. How's that? How's that a cop out?
All right, you are a politician. Answer that correctly.
There you go.
What other technology? You said CBCT. After CBCT, what would it be?
For me, because I train on it every single day, is the software, practice management software. This is what I find. Practice management software is that iceberg that the Hindenburg hit. You see that little tip that people use. but they don't ever use what's under the surface. I have offices that I go into and I show them something that's blatantly obvious in the software that they've never, ever, ever used. And all I get is, well, that wasn't there yesterday. I kind of have to tease them and say, yeah, I brought that along with me. I brought that feature when I came in today. But they don't utilize the software. They have it, but they don't utilize it. And there's lots of flaws in software. All the softwares have it.
But what
But
percent of the software, when you run in and run a report about what's never been ran or used, what percent of the software has never been used?
80%.
And the difference between dentistry in franchise America, which is the same size as healthcare. Healthcare is about 17% of the economy. Franchise is about 19% of the economy. Is they stream it all down to a process that you keep talking about: people,
Yep.
process, profit, product, philosophy. So there's exactly only one way at Hertz Rent-A-Car to check in a patient. Only one way at Hilton. And what the software company's done is every time a dentist has sent them a software idea for 30 flipping years, they said, okay, we'll add that. So you log on to Dentrix, EagleSoft, SoftDent, they're all the same. 47 million things you can do. Every consultant says they'll never use 80%. I told every one of those CEOs myself 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago that I would get with a consultant to say, here's Andre's way. So here you to check in a patient, you have to do this. To check out a patient, do this. And if you don't do this step, it won't be, just it's too much. Get
Yep.
down to a process so that I can take someone off the street and they can learn it in an hour.
Yeah. And that's it, the cyst after my
And
name on my email address.
you would think they could just have the existing EagleSoft, where one of the programs could be, we're going to get rid of 80% of the stuff you're not using anyway, and you're just going to do Andre's process.
I
And then
agree.
if another consultant came along and said, no, I want to do it like Sandy Purdue or Sally McKinsey or Linda Miles or whatever, and then you go in the office and say, what do you do? And say, well, we have EagleSoft, but we do it according to AADOM. We do their process.
Yep. I agree. And it's funny because I train in such a way that I always do it. I say, you can do it any way you want. This is the way I suggest that you do it. And I show them one way that I know is the best way to do it. But again, use my orange analogy. I want to squeeze every bit of juice out of that orange. I want them to use every conceivable thing they can because, again, I've seen all the practices. I see how they use the software. And I see offices, they generate as much paper as they do data stream. They're using paper every day where they could be using a computer.
So
Uh,
Andre, the 4,000 pound elephant in the room, that's the big evil monster, is corporate.
yep.
What is do you think corporate's making a material impact? And if so, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? What could we learn from corporate? What is corporate doing wrong?
I think corporate's doing everything right. I mean, I have lots of respect for what Rick Workman's done with Heartland. There are some who do it well, some who don't do it well. I think what we learn, and a lot of the sort of the young associates that I get to meet have had a few years in those corporate environments, and they tend to learn good business practices by working with those offices. So I think we learn from them the same things we learn if you were a diner and you worked at a McDonald's for a little while. You learn process, you learn profit margin, you learn those things that are really, really important. You also learn, again, philosophy. This is how I want to run my practice now that I've worked in a corporate environment. I think that they've raised the water level for everybody. Um, they're also bringing patient education up. Every time they run an ad on the TV for, although it doesn't normalize costs very well for most of the fee-for-service offices, at least that gets out there. That the commercials that Clear Choice is doing for their
Oh my
all-in-fours.
God, that is so amazing.
Oh, and
They'll watch 30-minute infomercials on all in fours, then run to your office and tell you all about it.
thank God for that.
Yeah.
Thank God for that because I remember the days of patients coming in and saying, "Look at the new veneers that we got at the office down the street because they're cosmetic dentist." You go, "Well, we do it here." Well, nobody ever told me. Well, it is. I think they've actually made the game change, and I think they've raised the game for everybody.
You're talking
So
to a lot of young kids. You're driving all around several of these states. Is there any difference? Is success easier in rural than urban, or or is that really not the issue?
Well, it's changed dramatically, and Philadelphia again. You've got all the dental schools, so you have tons and tons of dentists. In this area, the city worked for a long time, but rural is the way to go. I mean, that if I were building a practice, it would definitely be a rural practice. But again, the city is moving out too. So, if you're rural today, you might be the city tomorrow. So,
And the city's going to move out. The suburbs about to take a quantum leap because the problem with when humans want to get away from their work in downtown Philly is they don't want to drive. But the driverless cars, it's going to be a game changer because you're just going to walk out and it's going to be just an enclosed box, and you're going to have your favorite chair and your big screen TV or your computer and your desk, and you're just going to get there and start doing your emails or watch a movie or whatever. And at that point, it's no longer going to be a stressful commute. So as soon as that is the norm, and it is just the technology's all there, they're rolling it out. Then when mom wants to buy a house out in the country and have 10 acres or whatever, and then she's looking at that, but I got a 2 hour commute. She's like, you know what? That'll be the best 2 hours because when you talk to people that work in office, they'll all tell you they get so much more done at home because no one's interrupting them.
yep.
And when you're just in your little cubicle box being automatically driven to work and nobody's bothering you, you're just going to crank out the work. I mean, they're actually going to love it.
Yeah, and you're seeing it too with the advent of the audiobook and the podcast. A lot of commuters don't mind the commute anymore. It's downtime, and for me, distance driving is no big deal to me. I drive 3-4 hours a day and back and forth to an office and don't think twice about it. I think what's happening is people are getting used to the commute and they're accepting that, and it's not a big issue anymore. So going to a rural environment for a dental practice, I think that's where I would go if I were a kid coming out right now.
Well,
Definitely.
well, we are out of time. I got to leave you on the funniest commute
Cool.
story I ever did in my life. I was in this dentist's office in New Orleans, and I'm pretty sure I got the cities the it was New Orleans, and they were on the way home. And there's this long bridge. I mean, it's a really long bridge across swamps or bayou or whatever the heck it was. And right before you get on the bridge, there's a drive-through liquor store, and we're just driving and we're talking and everything. He swings through there like without even blinking, buys two big old 40 ounce, hugest can of beer I've ever seen, hands me one, another one, just pops that thing and takes back over the bridge. And I'm looking back at that liquor store, and there's just a line of cars. And I'm thinking, wow, that's how everybody in Louisiana is dealing with a long commute. They're just getting a 40 ounce tall boy. And so that'll be better when those guys all have driverless cars. Hey, Andre, seriously, dude, thank you so much. I mean, you've been a townie since the beginning. I mean, day
Yeah.
one, dude. I mean, day one. And
Yeah.
you have that start date of 6/21/2001, and that's a default because when we updated the software, we started in '98, but a lot of the dates just went to that. And
Yeah.
you got 500 posts. Seriously, dude, I love your posts. I'm a big fan of you. Everyone I know that knows you loves you.